the interprovincial trade barriers, we can't even estimate the number. Like there's different standards for trucking companies in every province. You leave from one province to deliver to another province, you have to do paperwork all along the way there, get way bills across the place. You can't buy alcohol. I'm an engineer. I have a ring. I can't practice in Quebec or any other province, even though I'm sanctioned here, unless I pay them money to do that. It goes on and on and on. Yeah. And like our country, we're worried. Yes, we were worried.
Canada.
Yeah, we were worried about $125 billion. We blow that all the time.
Welcome to this Critical Compass live stream. We're lucky enough to have Martyupnorth with us again, and we are today going to discuss probably a lot of things, but the at least the excuse for getting together today is tariffs. This was going to be a whole lot of a lot spicier of a live stream until about, I don't know what it was, 3 o'clock
24 hours ago
afternoon.
Yeah.
So, but hey, I mean, I guess it's a good thing. But Marty, what I don't know, give your take on this. Like for people listening who just kind of vaguely understand the term of what we're talking about here. What is a tariff?
A tariff is usually countries will impose a tariff on another country to prevent to diminish competition on a good that they already make coming into from other countries. So as an example, Canada makes aluminum. We make aluminum, and we want people to buy our own aluminum. And if there's another country that has aluminum and they make it really, really cheap compared to us, let's say China, then we would, our government could impose a tariff on aluminum coming from China. And what that means is that, if I'm the guy who's building trucks and I need to build an aluminum frame for my truck, they're encouraging me to buy aluminum from Canada. And if the aluminum from China is cheaper, when they impose a tariff on it, they artificially make it more expensive. So they're kind of forcing me to go find to buy local. And so it's usually limited for that, like very limited. So in Canada, we've had tariffs against the Americans for a long time. Like we tariff the shit out of their dairy products. We make it completely uncompetitive for an American to sell cheese or milk to Canada. Like you never see it on the shelf.
Supply management, right?
In this case, we call it like the dairy cartel, because the tariffs that we impose on China were like 200%. So if an American wants to sell me a liter of milk, he has to be like 200% cheaper. He has to sell it to me for 50 cents. I'll buy it for 50 cents, and then the government will slap another buck on it. And if that's the case and it's still cheaper than the Canadian one, well, then so be it. So that's an example of a tariff. And when Donald Trump said that he was going to impose tariffs on Canada and other nations, he said this, like, this is a policy of his, right? He said it during his debate with Kamala Harris like 4 months ago. He said it in his inauguration speech. He hinted at it all along. But he wanted to use tariffs not to necessarily he wanted to use tariffs to force his own people to buy local and not to buy from Canada. And that's a crazy idea, because they're already getting crazy deals from us. Like, our dollar is worth like 70% of their dollar, and we're an exporting country, and they're buying from us things that they already need. So the whole idea, when Donald suggested tariffs, like initially I was not worried about it. Like I thought it's an interesting concept, but I wasn't fundamentally worried.
So it almost seems like, if not for the benefit of forcing local reliance on local American products, it almost feels like it's partially a power move, and also partially to set the tone and to create a reaction that he's in the driver's seat and he's starting these ripples. And now we're seeing everybody react in real time.
Oh yeah,
Puppet
absolutely.
master at work.
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to his original. Like when he first mentioned tariffs, he kind of mentioned it in the context of that they would bring in extra money. That's one thing, right? So he talked about like other country. He uses a weird term, right? Like he talks that they're subsidizing other countries. I disagree with that. I mean, like he very marginally, like on paper, the Americans buy more from us than we buy from them. So he used the term, we're subsidizing Canada. It's like, well, no, it's a trade imbalance, but your economy is 10 times bigger than ours. So you're always going to. So he used the term. He was upset that that they were subsidizing other countries. He also bounced the idea of tariffs as a way to finance the government and be able to perhaps lower the taxes on his own citizens. And and then he also used, he talked openly about the fact that America used to be a powerhouse when it came to manufacturing and things like that, and they'd lost the lead on some of that. Manufacturing was now occurring in China and India and places like that. So he wanted to use tariffs for multiple reasons, to regain advantages, to kickstart industries that had disappeared, and to generate extra money. So and those ideas, I'm not an economist, but those ideas are old. I mean, in fact, when he was talking about this, like he kept referring to one of their old presidents, like McKinley did this. It's like, yeah, McKinley did that in 1920. Like, like the world of 1920 compared to today, like it's not the same way. So but so he did that for that. But to your point, James, yeah, he also, everybody talks about Trump and his book, The Art of the Deal, and other things. And yeah, like in hindsight, when I look at, I tweeted about this today. It was a wicked, it was a dick move. It was a bully move. It was a power move, right? And this morning, Canada's like, we're going like, whew, we're breathing a sigh of relief. He sent us a clear message, but think of and we're his best friends, right? Or supposedly we're some of his best friends. We've been allies through whatever 3 wars. Think of the message it sends to Ukraine, to Saudi Arabia, to Germany, to South Africa, to Brazil, any other country that he's going to do business with in the next year or 4 years. Like, if I'm willing to squeeze my neighbors, my best friends, my cousins, then what am I willing to do to you guys, right? So it was a pretty awesome power move.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now I want to say something. I know you're having something. I'm having an American bourbon right now, and I tweeted about this today. Some of the stuff we saw the other day, like Canadians booing at hockey games, stuff like that. Sure, it's emotional, and there was some reflection to that, but no hard feelings, right? It's business. Business is business. And so, yeah, that was my message to Americans. Well played, Trump. Well played. And hopefully no hard feelings. We heard you loud and clear. And then let's move on.
Well, and what I heard as well is that, and I don't know how much truth there is to this, but I can see a world in which this is the case. I mean, one of the, Canada did come forward with at least kind of like a skeleton of a plan, kind of mid-December, about 2-3 weeks after the initial tariff threats. And they said, we'll commit this amount of money and we'll commit that amount of money. And then Trudeau went on a ski vacation and then resigned and prorogued Parliament. And so nothing, like no monies were allocated. Nothing was actually like, instantiated. So this final threat here, last weekend was kind of the, we came forward again with yesterday, apparently with a very similar plan, but with much more, concrete numbers, 10,000 border agents, whatever. And interestingly, one of the new additions to that plan was a joint American Canadian task force kind of. Yeah. And so I was reading some comments where people were saying, like, I think it was Jason James, I think is his name. We follow him on X. He's a good commentator. He was saying that, like, maybe this is maybe what Trump actually wants is to, like, get a little bit of insight into just how captured the Canadian government is with Chinese interests. Maybe this is like an insider play to kind of like really understand what he's dealing with.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we like, first of all, yeah, like trying to get into Trump's mind right now is impossible, right? Like none of us, like, I mean,
It always
yeah,
has been.
you can analyze it. Yeah, so earlier we talked about on the surface, why would you use tariffs? So you would use tariffs economically for a small gain, but you can use tariffs or sanctions as punishment, right? We do that to other nations, like we've done. You know, we did it to Iran and other countries. Like it has nothing to do with helping our own economy. Like when Iran 20 years ago misbehaved and did something, we'd say, well, we're doing an embargo, or we're sanctioning you, or we're doing stuff like that. So yes, Trump also simultaneously, the tariffs look like they were a bit of a sanction or a punishment for not doing something he asked us to do. And one of the things he asked is secure your border. And I'll admit, like when I heard him say that, like 2 months ago, I was a little taken aback by that, right? I mean, if you think of Americans and which border is giving Americans grief, like the first one that comes to mind is Mexico, right? But then I looked into our border, and then you realize, there is a fentanyl problem. There is cartel-like actually not cartel-like. There's cartel organizations in Canada, in Vancouver, in Toronto.
Yeah.
The Chinese,
Abbotsford.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So did he use the sanctions as a threat or a form of punishment? Sure, absolutely. And then he also used the sanctions as he could have used them as a bargaining chip for because we also know that the NAFTA, I keep calling it the NAFTA agreement, the North American Free Trade, but the free trade is due for renewal like in July. So yeah, I mean there's lots at play. I'll even go this far to the whole Chinese interference thing. I think there's quite a bit of value in there, or not value, a bit of validity in that. Like, Trump 1.0, when he got elected 8 years ago, one of his mandates then was like, I'm going to clean up the swamp, right? I'm going to clean up the swamp. And then he started cleaning up the swamp. Then he lost that election. Biden came in. Now he's finishing cleaning up the swamp. He's doing it in his own territory. But I think while cleaning up the swamp, he looked north. He looked elsewhere, and he saw Canada. He's like, you guys got a little bit of swamp in.
Pretty swampy.
Yeah, it's pretty swampy. I'm going to go. He doesn't like Trudeau. Like, I don't think there's any love lost between those two. So yeah.
One thing I'm noticing is as this unfolds, there's going to be things pushed into the collective consciousness that will be impossible to ignore. And I'm curious for us to observe, like, well, what did the conservatives say about some of these issues? What did the liberals say? And then I want to see how the story changes, and then see if there's backpedaling, or see what unfolds with, maybe they'll speak their mind and they'll claim something like, well, yes, we put in a border plan, but look, 90% of the weapons like that criminals use come from, they're smuggled across the border. They let that one slip through, and then we're like, well, what does that mean for our gun laws here in Canada? As they try to double down and justify one thing, it reveals more in other areas. So we got to be hyper vigilant to observe and to really call out what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the border one, again, that was an interesting one, because he was sort of, okay, let's say there is a problem with the border. It's a two-way street, right? The border, like, people cross the border. So it's like, yeah, you want us to stop people from going into your country, but you can also stop them from coming into your country. Like, last time I looked, actually, you're free to leave Canada, and you're stopped when you enter the US, and vice versa. So when he was complaining that, but that's not what he wasn't complaining about that. I mean, what he was complaining about when he looking at the border is the bigger picture, which is the stuff that we make here that we're allowing across the border. But to your point, we could have easily said, sure, there's drugs going in from our side to your side, but you're sending us guns. But then he could argue the guns are not illegal, whereas the drugs are illegal. We can get into semantics, but boy, I mean, I'm glad we have an hour because we got a lot to unpack. I mean, there's like a ton to unpack. Like, which way do you guys want to take this? Like, we can go in all sorts of.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever feels right.
Okay. Let's I think on your train of thought, James, one of the things that okay, so yesterday we get this good news, right? Like I fundamentally thought let's let what I would have done is let Trump say he wants to impose the tariffs, because me, pragmatically speaking, you're just going to hurt yourself. That's what I thought. And let him do that. Don't go with this retaliatory language. And in fact, don't do the retaliatory language. Go visit Trump and ask him what you want. But unfortunately, we immediately chose to go down like the overwhelmingly, like we all heard it last week. Team Canada, 9 out of 10 premiers were all on board with retaliation. They even started retaliating, pulling booze off the shelf, canceling Starlink things and whatnot. I saw yesterday as a win because Trump backed off temporarily on the tariffs, and we have to come back on that because yes, I'm curious to see what happens in 30 days, and I think there's technical issues there. But I had another win yesterday, which is more closer to me as an Albertan. You guys know this. I'm border, like I'm an Alberta separatist now. I look at Confederation, and I don't think it's been working very well. And for me, the events of the last 3 weeks, like if anybody still thinks that Alberta is part of Team Canada, like everybody had suddenly everybody had these revelations. Oh, we should have diversified the economy. We should have had more markets. We should have built pipelines. We should have, they suddenly everybody wanted us on board to be Team Canada. The tariffs got lifted yesterday. This morning, they asked the Premier of Quebec, okay, so now after seeing what just happened, how do you feel about building a pipeline across Quebec to help Alberta? And what did he say? Flat out, no way. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Yeah. So to me, I got a couple of wins this week because one of my big wins was what's the expression? In vino veritas, right? Like in wine comes truth, or in a good battle comes the truth. Like, and I think we saw some ugly truths this week. The country has a hard time rallying around a common cause, and the country's divided.
Yeah. So it's Team Canada, well, but not in that way, but in this way, yes. It's conditional.
Yeah. I mean, I listening to some of the politicians today. Like there was one politician in particular, the liberal leader or candidate, the Ruby. I don't remember her last name. Anyways,
like Dolly Wall,
something like that. And then she kept saying like, "Oh, the last 72 hours were an eye opener." She must have said it 5 times in an interview. The last 72 hours were an eye opener, an eye opener, an eye opener. I'm like, an eye opener. We pay you guys big bucks. You're a liberal. You've been in power for 10 years, and you couldn't predict any of this. Like suddenly, like what happened? What happened this week is a huge eye opener for you, and you're going to suddenly solve the problems that we've been screaming about for years. We should diversify the economy. We should have more than just the Americans as partners. We should have oil. We should do this. We should do that. And then to hear liberals this week saying it was an eye opener and we need to fix that problem, I'm like, wow. Like, and then I don't want to pick on Pierre too much, but I found that when Pierre got on board this, the retaliatory tariffs, I was like, oh God, you guys are all going down the center.
Yeah. He had we were talking about that yesterday briefly. It's like he had such a perfect opportunity to just from the start say like what Danielle Smith was saying, like, hey, listen, I mean, it's a very simple ask what Trump was asking 2 months ago. Yep. Like if the border is so, like, if we're such a small portion of the amount of drugs and illegals entering the US, if it's so like insignificant, then it should be easy to solve. Like, why are you risking billions of dollars in a crashed economy if it could be just, it's just nothing, right? So it didn't make any sense from the beginning.
Yeah, if it is a huge problem, then Trump's got a point. Yeah. If it's a small problem, it can be solved. So it
doesn't need this like dick measuring contest.
No, and
right?
and I mean, lots of people brought up similar ideas, but I love Twitter and places like that because you can put out an idea and then either your tweet ages well or it doesn't age well. And I've had a lot of tweets that aged well in the last few weeks. I mean, like I literally said a month ago, why don't we designate somebody significant to go negotiate with Trump? Because it wasn't going to be Trudeau. He's a lame duck and he doesn't like him. I'm like, pick somebody else. Yeah. Don't pick Jolie. Pick somebody legitimate. Send him to go meet with Trump and then work this out. You don't like our border? Done. We'll fix that. You don't think we're not spending 2% of our GDP on the military. Our bad. You're right, Donald. Sorry. What are we short? 50 billion? Can't do it next year, but tell you what, how about I do $25 billion? Is that okay? Oh, better yet, I'll do $25 billion in the next couple of years, and I'll buy everything I need from you guys. I'll buy a frigate from you guys, 180 jets, and maybe a whole pile of ammunition. Is that good enough? Oh, and you're worried about Greenland and the Russians. Tell you what, here's 1,000 square kilometers of prime real estate in Labrador. Build a base. Knock yourself out, man. Like, this could have all been negotiated. And maybe that's what he wants, right? Maybe that's what he wants, and he just goes for the jugular and then backs off, and then we'll see the real negotiation. But because I mean, the concessions he got from us right now are what? Like, Trudeau comes out, he rehashed a plan he published like December 18th. Like, we're going to do $1.3 billion over 3 years. Ooh, that's $130 million. Like, what is that? Like, that's Arrive Can every year. Like, we spent more than that on the Arrive Can app. And and I want to dissect that. I don't even think he can deliver that $1.3 billion in the next 30 days. I
very much doubt
because I went in detail through the budget. The money's not there, man. Like, he won't be able to. No. The best that Trudeau can do in the next 30 days is we can deploy the military along the border. Like, he can call the Vandus and the PPCLI and just send 1,000 guys, like the Americans are doing on their southern border. We can set up a couple of tents and send a bunch of guys and have people fly back and forth in our antiquated 50-year-old Sea Kings, and hopefully
our Vietnamese era helicopters. Yeah.
God.
That's that brings up a point about when you talk about like getting wins, right? Like, I was curious to see what you think. Like, do you consider, when I was looking at how the tariffs broke down right at the end there, when he announced the difference in like 25% across the board, 10% on Canadian energy, do you think that was a Danielle Smith win? Do you think, like, when she went down and chatted with him, like, the reason why it wasn't 25% as well on Canadian energy is because she had some effect on that? Or do you think it was unrelated?
No, I think she had I think she had some effect. I mean, she didn't just she didn't just meet Trump. Like, during the inauguration, she was, working pretty hard. I think she had more effect with other people and lobbyists, like oil industry executives. Realistically, like, the pictures of her and Trump last week or 2 weeks ago when she was at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, like, it was her photographer taking pictures and she was publishing the pictures. If Trump really liked her, he would have published the pictures like he did for so many other people. Remember when he went to Paris for the reopening of Notre Dame? Like, he was all happy, here's him. So anyways, let me collect my thoughts. So she had some impact. More importantly, I hope she tapped guys, the president of CNRL, the president of TransCanada, those guys, and say, hey, you talk to your counterparts, which they did. But let's not forget, Trump also does have really smart people working for him. Like, that's one thing I love about the American presidency. Like, once a week, he'll pull out his Rolodex. Any president can do this and say, I want to see the senior guys from the oil industry in my office next week. And they'll be there and they'll talk to him. So I'm sure the people who own the big refineries in Chicago and in the Midwest and then in Houston, they got a hold of him and said, Donald, by the way, and I know this because I worked on Keystone, right? They consume 12 million barrels of oil per day. They make 9. And then Donald said, drill, baby, drill. It's like, Donald, you can drill, baby, drill, but not all oils are the same. So the oil that you're short, those 3 million barrels, those 4 million barrels you get from us, actually he gets 3 million from us because we send 4. they keep 3 and they send 1 back up north to Ontario. It takes a really so the 3 he gets from us every day is very heavy crude that they distill in their refineries to make diesel. And they can't make, and so Donald can drill all he wants. He won't find that crude in his territory. He'll find a little bit of it in California, but it's in California. Like, and then everybody said, well, then we can import it from Venezuela. That's fine. You can. So you're choosing to import from Venezuela instead of from Canada, a NATO ally. And you think that Venezuela is going to give you a great deal because you just canceled the deal with Canada? And there's still a technical problem because the oil if you brought in the oil from Venezuela, the Keystone pipeline that goes to all those refineries, it's going in one direction. So now if you brought the oil, anyways, if I know it, Trump knew it and his advisors knew it, and somebody tapped him on the shoulder and said, maybe we go 10% on oil. So because the other tariffs, sure, people could replace, what do we sell? Apple juice, he'll go get it from somewhere else. Lumber, he'll get it from somewhere else. But I expected it on oil. We could have crippled him. And that's the other thing. I mean, we think we're small. We could have crippled him on a couple of things, man. The oil would have been crippling. Like if we shut off the oil, it'd be a bit crippling. And our potash, man. If we shut off our potash, holy smokes.
Potash is huge, yeah.
And actually, I spoke to somebody else about this. I'll give credit to it's David Parker. Me and David had a chat on this. Like, I asked David because every election is won like on the edges, right? Like even the Trump election looks like it was big. Wasn't a big win, man. He still had to flip Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and a couple of key states like that. So I asked David, I'm like, if you had to retaliate for real, where would you hit? And he picked like 3 states with about only 1 million votes, but they were mostly farm states. Like he's like, yeah, you shut off the potash going to Iowa and Ohio and places like that. Man, those guys they'll turn on Trump so fast. So luckily we didn't get there, but we do. Yeah, we did have a couple in the chamber. I mean, we could technically retaliate. Yeah. So to your original question, Danielle was diplomatic. God love her for that. I'm not, she did a good job. I don't think it was one-on-one with Trump, but her one-on-ones with a whole bunch of other people and sending a bunch of energy guys to supplement what Trump's own guys would have been saying to him, for sure.
Yeah. And when you say cripple the United States, that would still have an effect on us too. Like if we're not selling that, so
trade wars are lose, man.
Discretion. Yeah,
it's mutually agree. What's the term for nuclear energy?
Mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, like why would we want to go there? I don't want to go there, man. Like no.
So the other thought is, I've seen a lot of demonization of Danielle Smith for even going to the United States and having these conversations. Oh. And that to me is insane, that she is actively embracing diplomacy and getting demonized for that. And that doesn't make sense to me.
The worst one was Nenshi.
I think.
Sorry, James. Sorry to interrupt your thought, but go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, Nenshi's just, again, acting in self-interest. And what we're going to see more of is these things that get revealed, it's going to be used solely for political gain. So even oil being as much of a big deal right now, and if they say like, well, look at how critical, like look at how much we're relying on oil, and if we didn't sell this oil, that would cripple our economy, then they'll just say, well, we need more wind farms, we need more solar, and we need more EVs. So they're going to use it to continue to push their goals, even though the reality doesn't match up. It's going to be used. That's what I'm most curious about, is how all these revelations are just going to be used to double down.
I want to unpack that one in a second. I'm circling EVs because we got to come back to EVs, but I do like, Nenshi was disgusting. Like Nenshi literally put out a tweet 2 days ago that said, Albertans deserve a leader that will work for Canada. I'm like, what kind of mental gymnastics is that? It's like, no. Albertans deserve a leader that will work for Albertans within the context of Canada. Absolutely. But if Canada's not cooperating, then like, we don't bend to the rest of Canada. Like, people are saying they didn't, like, oh, congratulations, Trudeau, you didn't bend to Trump. But bad, Danielle, because you didn't bend to Trudeau. Well, she should be on the same team as us. I'm like, maybe I'm on Team Trump for this one. I don't know, right? Like, oh, Nenchi's takes on this were brutal.
Nenchi, we should just be happy that the tweet wasn't from Nenchi. Albertans deserve a premier who will work for Brussels, or for Davos, or for something like. They may as well be.
Might as well be. Actually, that's a great. I use that kind of example when I'm making a point. I will take somebody's tweet and just change one word in it. We all do that, right? You change one word and you go, and then people go, "Well, that's disgusting." I'm like, yeah, well.
Yeah, does the logic carry?
The logic carries, exactly. Context. So I want to go back to EVs. Like, yes, that's that. Look at how the narrative, look at how the liberal narrative collapsed, in not just because of Trump, but also because of the election. They're like, suddenly they're moving away from the carbon tax. They're moving away from net zero. They're moving from, so a lot of things they're moving away is, I see three reasons. One, they're moving to the center because that's where Canadians are. So they think they went too far left. So they're moving to the center. They'll say they're moving on their own. I think that Pierre's pulling them to the center, but Trump is pulling them as much, right? Like, right now, anybody can say whatever they want. Trump is this big giant mass in the middle of the continent, and he's gravity. He's a supernova, and we're being, light's not escaping. So whatever policy you have. As an example, when Trump said, I'm canceling DEI policies or net zero, like 14 banks followed in suit, including 5 here in Canada, said we're done with our DEI policy instantly. It's like, wow, why were you doing it in the first place? Wow. And the excuse was always, well, it made business sense or whatever. It's like, no, it doesn't. You did it because he did it. So so they reversed that. But yeah, on EVs, like, last week, what did they say? Well, we should impose I'm sure Freeland said we should impose 100% tariff on Teslas. I'm like, but a month ago, you're telling us that by 2035, all cars sold in Canada have to be electric. Like, oh my God. Yeah, they were saying
they could be built at that.
Yeah, what's the expression?
That VW plant that's not going to exist.
Yeah, they were spiting themselves. Is that the correct expression? They were
cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. Like, they were, it was. And we gave the example of Francois Legault, who like a week ago was like, hey, we should all be Team Canada. We should have diversified the economy. We should be selling oil to whoever. And then the tariffs are gone. Can we build a pipeline across Quebec? Nope. I mean, the Quebecers buy Canadian, buy Canadian, buy Canadian, buy Canadian. Like, he literally said in French, il faut serrer les coudes. We have to tighten our belts, kind of thing. And we have to buy Canadian. And for the next little while, buy Canadian, buy Canadian. As soon as the tariffs were lifted, everybody's like, okay, well, I'm going back to Florida. Nobody even left Florida to come back home. Like, there's 1 million Quebecers in Florida right now. 1 million of them. 1 million snowbirds.
Wow.
And telling me that I'm an Albertan and I'm bad and I should be on Team Canada while you spend 6 months of the year in Florida. Okay. Sure. Like,
so here's a simple little question. How much the oil how much of the gasoline in Quebec is Canadian?
About 10%. It's very minuscule.
So buy Canadian, except in this case.
I mean, the oil in I have videos of this because I worked in Quebec. I mean, you see the little tankers coming up the St. Lawrence right up to Quebec City, and then they unload their crude. There's a refinery in Quebec City and there's one in Montreal. The one in Montreal can find a way to get some crude from the US, but like I said, it's taken a torturous path from Canada. The ones in Quebec City are getting all their crude up to the unfrozen section of the St. Lawrence. And then I love this argument. I mean, people in that part of the world say our gasoline comes from Irving Refinery in St. John, New Brunswick. I'm like, okay, You got me.
Yeah, where did they get it?
You got me. Your gasoline is quote unquote made in Canada, but the raw materials for it came from. Dude, I've had people say, well, Quebec doesn't buy gasoline, the refineries do, or whatever. I'm like, oh my God. Like, people will.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
You get the same kind of bullshit where it's like, well, these peppers were grown in Argentina, like packed in Spain, and then like now brought to Canada. And like, or they're like, they put a stamp on it. They're like, yeah, they're Canadian peppers because we touched them in like at one point of the chain. We did something, and now they're Canadian.
The food industry is terrible for that, right? Like packaged in versus made in versus in. Like they play games. It's I wish we could put a made in Canada sticker on the gas pumps, or just where it's made. That everybody in Quebec who lifted the nozzle had a little sticker that says, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, whatever, Oman, just show where your gasoline came from. Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if that would have an effect on people's perceptions, because I mean, I don't know what the average Quebecer believes, but you got to think that like even the most like, anti-Albertan Quebecer would still probably prefer Alberta oil to Saudi oil, right? Like you'd have to think that.
You'd have to think they would. They don't. They've been conditioned to not even think about the fact that they're burning gasoline. Like they justify burning gasoline by saying, well, we're pretty green on everything else. Like for them, burning gasoline in a car is just it's just a necessary evil, and at this point for them, whether it came from Canada or Saudi Arabia is irrelevant for them. Both are bad, and so since they're both bad, I'll take the one that's closest to us. That's literally their way of thinking about it. They've justified it in their heads. I mean, like I talk about this all the time. I tweet about this about every 6 months because I love picking on Quebecers. They're like, like they buy more trucks than Albertans do. Like, just, is that right? Oh, just in sheer numbers, man. There's 9 million Quebecers and there's only, 5 million Albertans. Yeah. So Ford sells more F-150s in Quebec than they do in Alberta. And people go, oh, well, that's on a per capita basis. I'm glad you brought that up. You guys Quebecers buy more gasoline powered vehicles per capita than anywhere else in the country. They love cars, man. They love cars. And then trucks have outsold cars in Quebec since 2014. But when you show that to them, they're not hypocrites. Those are just necessary evils that there's no replacement. We're good because in their mind, their environmental footprint is 9 times better than ours because they got electricity. That's it. Like it's argument.
These are things that feel good on the surface. Yep. They're done because, if we do A, B, and C, then we're the good people. We're the moral, and it's top down. You kind of like assert what is moral, and now it just. Yeah,
I just assume that every Quebecer is driving a 1970s Renault 10.
They are actually not 1970s, but they do. Again, they love their cars. Like you go to Quebec City, La Grande Allée in Quebec City, and it's a showcase of beautiful cars. And they tend to drive cars that we don't drive. You will see beautiful Renaults, like Renault makes nice cars, and you'll see Fiats and all sorts of Italian brands. Europeans, Quebecers drive lots of Saabs. You drive all over Quebec, man. There's Saabs everywhere. I imagine right now it's full of Teslas. And interesting.
We'll have to find a way to convert all those classic cars into EVs.
Yeah.
Just slap
somebody's working on that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, there was a comment earlier on here. I wanted to go back to a point you said, Marty, about the general shift towards the center in this from the Liberal Party in commentary. I don't know if I can.
Are we getting comments? Can I see the comments? Or there's tons of comments. I never even saw that. Oh, cool, cool.
Under the tab.
It was Pearly, I think, was the I don't know if it's he or she, but was saying, I can't find the comment, but just some general idea that Polyev didn't want to give Carney any ammo in like sounding like Trump light or anything like that in his comments. So that's why he maybe was a little soft on that. I actually think, and I think we've probably talked about this before, that for the last like year and a half, it's felt that Polyev has generally been structuring his discourse around like being as moderate as possible to not scare away potential liberal voters, like disillusioned liberal voters. Yeah. Do you see much of that in his 100% reaction to the tariffs?
100%. Yeah. Like he like, you know, the only I think Danielle had a different stance on tariffs, and everybody says Max had a different stance. Yeah, Max, you had a different stance, but Max, unfortunately, you're just on the margins. And Poilievre, I'm not a political strategist, but I would love to see Poilievre. He could have come out. I don't think there would have been any harm in him saying, how about we just negotiate? How about we just meet Trump and negotiate with him? Or do something different, force the hand of he could have done something different. I think he did was literally like play exactly the same liberal. Like there was nothing about his stance that was different from the liberals, like nothing. So like, give me something, but he indistinguishable. And the excuse that
I would love
and
to
sorry,
do
it was Chatty. It was Chatty Lumpkin, not Pearly, but Pearly's been making good comments too. Sorry, James, go ahead.
There's definitely been some good comments in general. I would love to do a test where we take some of the statements on tariffs from each leader of the political party, hide the names, and then see if people can actually tell who said what, because they are not that different.
Well, you could do that on tariffs, and you could actually do that on every liberal candidate right now that's running for the liberal leadership, right? I mean, we're going to can the carbon tax. We're going to lower taxes. We're reversing our policy on the inclusion rate for capital gains. Like, God, I haven't like they are all going down this, dude. I posted about this the other day. You know, I joined the Liberal Party. Okay, I admit it. I joined the Liberal Party, and so I'm getting all these.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. And by the way, you can come audit me. I don't have a Conservative Party of Canada membership, so you can come audit me. I don't have one.
Yeah, that's a $10,000 fine.
The only
apparently.
membership that I have is I belong to the Alberta Conservative Party because I live here. But otherwise, anyways. So now I'm getting all these correspondences from the liberals, and I got one from Karina Gould the other day, and it said something like, you know, I'm liberal, I'm not going to be conservative light, and I'm like, oh my dear, like, no, your statement is actually very conservative light, as much as you'd like us. No, you know,
no one was worried.
Yeah, no one's worried. and then I'm like, it's only a matter of time before. Like, that's what I've been criticizing Pierre. Don't be conservative light or liberal light or whatever you want to call it. Be conservative. And again, I'm not a political strategist, but being conservative seems to work in places like Alberta, and it's worked in Florida and North Dakota, whatever. Like, it's that'd be a fun game. We need to do. I'm going to do that on Twitter tomorrow, man. Like, who said this? I'm going to put out quotes. Who said this?
Put a poll out. Yeah. Pearly says, with Trump's ascendancy, it would be safer for him to be a tad bit more conservative, and I would agree. I mean, like, look at from last year. Like, what was Poilievre's arguably most popular moment was when he was eating that apple and given that reporter shit for asking a stupid question. Extremely Trump-like in his delivery. Very, like, that sort of adversarial relationship with a shit lib reporter. That's perfect. He should lean into that. Like, people love that.
I found a great video online today on YouTube, and I can't remember the name of the guy, but I posted it on Twitter. And it's an American who I guess went to Davos last week, and he heard Trump by video conference. And in this video, the guy says, like, you know, when he first started hearing Trump, he thought, oh my God, they're gonna do everything to destroy him here in Davos. And he's like, and then the question and answer came out, and then all of a sudden, everybody was like literally applauding Trump because Trump said, you know, I'm gonna lower taxes. I'm gonna kickstart my economy. I'm gonna start burning more oil. I'm gonna be energy independent. I'm gonna secure my border. And he just went on. And then he's like, the commentator said, everybody in Davos who a week ago hated him now secretly admired him. That was his sort of his conclusion. And he's like, Trump was a bit of a paradox, but when he thought about it, he's like, no, they're basically admitting, and that what the woke revolution and the net zero green revolution in Europe failed miserably. And the guys at Davos are looking for an excuse to finally say this failed. And to your point, Trump, Poilievre has it. Like what Trump said in Davos, Pierre, we've told you the exact same thing. The way out of our mess, because it's a mess right now. So what Poilievre's going to have to cut government, cut taxes, start paying down the debt, do all those things. And instead of adopting these real austerity measures, you can make that hard pill easier to swallow if you kickstart the economy. And I think that's the path. You know, people who really are analyzing Trump are saying that he is 100% well-intentioned. That's what he wants to do. Kickstart the American economy, fix this mess, and go further. Start paying down the debt and really, really restore the economy. So yeah, Poilievre, man, like become Trump's best friend. Like, do the same thing.
Well, and lean into it. I mean,
into it.
He's making, Trump is making like what like Europe has. Well, this is a whole other live stream, but Europe has so many problems. But the number one of which is that they've suffered from like a 200% as bad as like North American liberals of like not having any sort of national identity and like self-flagellating before they would ever have a national identity. And Trump is making nationalism cool again. He's giving license to other people to just admit that you're a nationalist and you put the interests of your country and your citizens above that of the global interests that don't give a shit about your country. And it's like, that's perfect. That's exactly what these countries are needing right now to like kickstart this kind of, like you say, like kickstart a little bit of
the whole idea
to localize again.
Yeah. Like what did Klaus Schwab say? We've infiltrated the governments around the world, and then he bragged about Trudeau, and he bragged about Ireland or whatever her name is. What's her name in New Zealand? God, how quickly we forget.
Jacinda
Ardern, and then Merkel, and he named them all, right? They're all failed ideologists. The post-national state, bullshit. We talked about this on the show. Like, look at what we did in our own country, man. Like, we're a small, great country that historically punched above its weight class, and we were good at extracting resources. We didn't worry too much about manufacturing. We extracted resources and we sold them to the rest of the world, and we made a good living. And somewhere along the way, we convinced ourselves that what we were doing was dirty and bad. I mean, I posted about this last week. Look at the 5 largest corporations in the US and look at 5 largest corporations in Canada. Like the 5 of the 10 largest corporations in Canada are banks. Banks. The whole world can do banking. And that's what Trump's pissed off about, because the whole world can do banking. He's not even allowed to bank in our country, but we're allowed to bank in his country. And like, where's our real value? Our 5 of the 10 largest companies are banks, man. God, it should be the potash companies. It should be the oil companies. It should be like, we shot ourselves in the foot. And Germany and European countries, like, I haven't been to Europe in 4 or 5 years. I'm almost afraid to go to Europe because I'm probably going to cry if I go to Europe and see what,
you're going to get arrested.
Probably can't even get on a plane. But Germany is a massively failed experiment, like of their transition to green. My God,
it does tie into there's been a fear of nationalism and it gets demonized very, very quickly. But I love tying things back to finding parallels between like looking at a country as a entity, but also looking at like, well, what about our family units or our personal lives? And usually like you hear this advice of like, get your house in order and get your life in order before you try to fix the
Clean
world.
your room.
That you're
Jordan
clean your
Peterson.
room, you're in, yeah. Like if you do not have the capacity to even like hold yourself up and go through your daily lives, how do you expect to contribute or save other people? And the same can be said for a country. If you don't have enough nationalistic or enough of a Canada first spirit to make sure people are doing well in Canada, how can you be properly contributing to this global, like how can you be saving the world if we can't even save Canadians first?
Oh, yeah.
And I see what, like it's such a simple concept, but it's lost on people.
Oh, but well, now we're going to get into a bit of. I'm willing to go down this sort of. There are some people that say, you know, the destruction that was thrown at us is legit, is intentional. I get that, right? I mean, because to your point, there's comments that have been made by Trudeau some days where I just go, holy shit! Like, you know, he very recently, like about 2 weeks ago, he was at a conference somewhere, and somebody was like, how can, you know, making the argument that when somebody's starving, they really don't care about, you know, climate change, right? And which is like, what's the order of needs, right? Like, and so
Maslow's,
and so then Trudeau brings that out, and then he's like, you know what? It's my job as a leader to make sure to sort of overrule Canadians. Sorry that they're starving, but the bigger picture here is we need to save the planet. And I'm the moral compass, and I'll make sure we still save the planet, even though they're starving. Like, he was like, when you dissect him when he's talking like that, you go, man, you are like either you're completely brainwashed or you're completely compromised, and there's a bigger. Like, I hate, you know, I've talked to you guys about this. I've talked to a lot of people. I hate thinking about conspiracies because I'm an engineer, and I know that just doing a compressor station, building, you know, spending $6 million building something is stressful, and I need to coordinate, and I have people that lose sleep over it, and I have to convince them that we'll get through this. So coordinating humans to do something is a lot of work. So when I hear people talk about these weird, huge conspiracies, I lose interest. I don't lose interest, but I'm skeptical. But then I get somebody who will remind me that say, well, yeah, but, you know, one or two people can change the whole room and make, you know, Germany's an example. So, yeah.
The litmus test is you play the game of like, okay, if every action seems like it's the inverse of any competent person, then that's not accidental. That's not accidental. That is
statistics.
Yeah. It's hard to like really be that terrible when you're like, it feels like there's something else going on if they are doing the inverse.
Yeah, it's the when you're the only person on the train with a mask and there's 400 other people without a mask, and you say you guys are all wrong. It's a pretty rare occasion where you're correct in that assessment, but I don't like to believe in conspiracy theories. That said, what are we batting on conspiracy theories in this country? Like, we're 9 for 9 right now, and some of the events of the last decade have convinced me.
We have bugs coming in food in Europe now.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a conspiracy. The like, when you say litmus test, James, the test that I like to use is if somebody with a huge platform, like either funded by a media company or some special interest group or some government official, is specifically telling me that I shouldn't be talking about or saying something or listening to people who say certain things, I pretty much know that thing was 100% correct. That's what I go for. If somebody with influence is saying you can't say this, that's probably because it's true.
If there's money behind it, yeah.
Frank, what's Frank's name from Ecos polls right now? Like, Frank is the lone voice in the wilderness telling everybody that the Liberals are back in the lead. Okay, thanks, Frank. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he's trying so hard, man. He's trying so hard.
Yeah, and So you have a litmus test, or what do we call it, like our spidey senses. I mean, it's weird how our spidey senses have been knocked down, right? People, like, I hear stuff all the time and I go, oh, that doesn't sound right, or that can't be correct. Even today, somebody sent me some statistics from the US showing that Americans were investing a lot of money at one of the universities, and like it was $1 billion. I'm like, ooh, that's like 3 times the annual budget of the school being invested by the Americans. I think we would have known about that a while ago. Like, there's a decimal place wrong somewhere there, or it's over the last 10 years, something like that. So I can't help myself. That's what I do all the time. I just question stuff. Yeah.
Well, did you hear how is it USAID? Like, is that how you say that? Like that department that they're dismantling? Yeah. Did you see that? I read something today that the American government is like the biggest financer of the BBC.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Why?
Yeah. Well,
that's like so strange.
When the money gets funneled through multiple entities,
we have our own.
It's a wash at some point.
Yeah, we have our own. There's a lady on Twitter, Naya. I never know how to pronounce her last name, but she spent.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about.
She spends a lot of time going. This is all public information, right? Like all these weird funds that you and I could apply to. I mean, you and I could apply to and get $30,000 to study. Do goldfish get drunk drinking bourbon? Like, somebody will give you $30,000.
We should do that study.
Yeah, we should. And anyways, Naya does that all the time. She, that lady,
her,
Fannerstill, Naya Fannerstill. And so she's often going into that website. We each have our, like, I like to go to the Statistics Canada website, and she likes to go to one of these and find these weird studies. And she's uncovered some doozies. Like, I the macro level. At the absolute macro level in the Canadian budget, there's a category at the bottom worth $86 billion called miscellaneous transfers. Like when you like, the budget's so big, right? The budget could be like 50 pages long. So it's condensed. And when you condense it into 3 pages, something that's manageable, there's an $86 billion box at the bottom called miscellaneous transfers. And man, that is the slush fund of all slush funds. Yeah. Like that's money to Ukraine. That's money for every pet project. And I like, what's Trump's new press secretary? What's her name? She's a pistol. We're gonna eventually we'll all remember her name because she's 27 years old.
She's good.
She's 27 years old, man. Like, that's one thing about.
Is it Carolyn Levitt?
Yeah. So she was holding that up. Like, the guys from Doge give her the stuff, and she's the one reading it, going like, "Here, 90, $50 million to you might get in trouble if you play it." Like, every one of her clips are fantastic. Or you won't get censored for playing? Yeah, don't worry about it. But like she uncovered one the other day. Like, they were sending $50 million to Gaza for condoms.
Oh yeah, and funding the DEI plays and stuff.
I think it wasn't exclusively for condoms, but they were part of the AIDS, but or part of the aid package. What I wanted to touch on is when we were talking about tariffs and we were talking about the potential impact that like 25% has, when it comes to it, like, Canadians started caring so much about that, yet there seems to be no unifying voice when it comes to, like, well, what's the impact of inter-provincial restrictions, carbon taxes, or any of the additional taxes that we just pay just on our normal day-to-day. We are paying a handful of taxes. So in this one case, these tariffs, that's a tax, that's bad. And now people don't seem to put that same lens back towards ourselves to analyze what's happening in Canada.
So, okay, cool. I tried to get a little traction on that. So one of the things I did is we traded in 2022 or 2023. We traded $700 billion to the U.S. So then I just did a table and I did 25% tariffs, 110%. So the tariffs amounted to $125 billion. Okay. Now, technically, the Americans were going to pay that. But once the tariffs are imposed on the Americans, what's supposed to happen is either they find a new market, so we lose the $125 billion of trade, or they squeeze us and they narrow it. So the amount of money we looked to lose only on the Americans imposing their tariffs would be 125 south, maybe anywhere in between there, right? Our government spends $2 billion a week on debt servicing, interest, debt servicing. So yes, to your the $125 billion, that's 2 years of interest on our debt. Our government accumulates debt. It's not even paying the debt. That's just the interest on the debt. Our government is accumulating this year officially $72 billion. It probably will end up at 90 by the time the parliamentary budget officer finishes doing their math. So we're not worried about that 90. Yeah, the interprovincial trade barriers, we can't even estimate the number. Like a trucking company, there's different standards for trucking companies in every province. You leave from one province to deliver to another province, you have to do paperwork all along the way there, get way bills across the place. You can't buy alcohol. I'm an engineer. I have a ring. I can't practice in Quebec or any other province, even though I'm sanctioned here, unless I pay them money to do that. It goes on and on and on. Yeah. And like our country, we're worried. Yes, we were worried.
Canada.
Yeah, we were worried about $125 billion. We blow that all the time. And that's now, man, you guys are good. You're going to get me going. But
now you got me going.
Yeah. I do this all day. Welcome to being retired. This is what Marty and my wife's all happy. He's like, yeah, go talk. Just stay away. And then I haven't had a lot. I went all January without a drink. Marty's having a drink tonight, so he's maybe a little bit tipsy. No, and that was the other thing. Yesterday, so maybe Trump wanted to get $125 billion in tariffs. Do you know how much money the U.S. economy lost yesterday just because of the fear? The stock market in the U.S. yesterday dropped 2.3% at the worst point, right? At the worst point, $1.5 trillion in U.S. money vaporized. And then people say, well, the market came back up. I'm like, that's great. Somebody made money, but somewhere along the way, yesterday, people lost 1.5 trillion freaking dollars. So, and our government has done silly things like this in the past. So in order to recover $125 billion of potential lost money, the Americans shot themselves in the foot to the tune of 10 times that amount. Like it's, and that's part of the reason, I think behind the scenes, that is another part of the reason why Trump said, oh shit, like we shouldn't do this. But then people will say, well, what's 100 billion? What's 100 trillion? Or what's 1 trillion on a $21 trillion economy? I'm like, well, that's 5%. Like that's, I
still $1 trillion. Yeah.
And
do you know who Thomas Massey is?
Yep.
Yeah. You know how he has his little like debt counter badge that he made? He's an engineer too. He's like a computer guy, right? Yeah. And he made this little like debt counter that he wears as a lapel pin, and it's just constantly linked to the U.S. Treasury, and it like constantly cycles what the U.S. debt is. It's in real time. And I was listening to him on Tucker actually. This was a few months ago, and he was saying that he was like looking at it, and it was in March or April or something, and instead of just ticking constantly up, like for a couple minutes in April, it actually went down for a second, and then it started going back up, and that's because everyone was paying their taxes. It was tax season, and then the debt started coming right back up. But I feel like we need one of the, like Polyev should ask him to make one for
the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has one on their website. They have one on a truck that they drive around once in a while. Like it's a big number. It's a number that doesn't even make sense to anybody. I mean, the just the federal debt on one side is $1.2 trillion, and then there's $600 million or 600 billion in pension debt. And people say, well, that's the CPP. No, that's not the CPP. That's federal employee pensions. That has nothing to do. So on the books, our government has 1.8 trillion. That's just the federal government. If you add up all the provinces themselves add another $3 trillion. And then you do the municipalities, and then you do the average Canadian. We are first or second or third, depending on the metric, in terms of debt per capita. We are absolutely
Is it like $80,000 per person?
It's a ridiculous number like
something
that.
like that.
Yeah. When your kids are born, they're born into debt. Like it's a big number, and that's one of the things. I'm not an economist. I know enough to be harmful, but Trump wants to address their debt. I mean, their debt compared to ours, like is more than 10 times ours. And then he's worried about the games being played with their currency, because the U.S. dollar is de facto a reserve currency around the world and stuff like that. So he's aware of some of those problems
for now.
Yeah.
I feel like part of this posturing from Trump is, so with the dollar being, it's a reserve currency, and it's a currency that all other countries settle transactions in. But BRICS is growing right now, and you're having more countries using BRICS as a system, almost in defiance of the United States and the USD.
Well, BRICS,
the strength behind Trump is partially helping to reinforce the dollar a little bit more, because without the perceived strength, it's backed by oil, it's backed by military strength as well. Yeah. And without a certain amount of perceived strength, the trust in the dollar as a reserve currency lowers.
Yeah. Which we're not going to go there, but the Liberals are thinking of electing Mark Carney as a leader. Oh my God. Like, when you want to talk about disastrous monetary policy, we're about to get worse. So yeah.
No one from anywhere he's ever done business recommends him as a leader.
He's being installed. I think it's the way he's parading around on the medias and everywhere else, I think he's being installed. He's pretty confident, but then I've seen confident.
That's what it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I've seen confident people. We witnessed it here 2 years ago. I mean, when I was in Calgary when the vote was being counted for our election, and Rachel Notley and her team had a weird look on their face, like they were like, "Whoa, how'd this one slip away from us?" So Carney.
Here's my litmus test with Carney. Nobody who's an outsider, who's never been in politics, that people didn't think about 1 month ago. They didn't even talk about him. Nobody gets a spot on the Daily Show just like that.
Yeah.
Like, how do you? That's not an accidental. That's not and he on the show he was claiming "Oh, I'm just an outsider. I'm not in politics." So that is not that was almost a genuine.
Yeah, and that was almost rehearsed, right? Like it was rehearsed and a little bit awkward, like pretending to be friends and everything else. And I'm sure. Isn't he going on there tonight again or soon? Like he's going back for another round.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's going to be. I'm genuinely surprised. Well, I'm not. I mean, I think they wanted Carney. They're using the narrative of fixing the economy, but I'm kind of surprised that the Liberals did not go harder to try and get a female. Like they're officially the only they're the only federal party in Canada who never had a female leader. So, right. but then they don't want Freeland. She burned those bridges, and the other two are too young. So there's nobody else willing to step up. It's just not. Yeah. Anyways,
hot take. Trudeau's been feminine enough for the last decade that they're going to balance it out with a little bit more masculinity than
Yeah, so they picked Mark Carney.
Yeah. And actually, it's off topic, but we talked about it earlier when we were talking. You made me think of something like, remember when Trudeau came in like in 2015 and said, we're back? Like when we were talking about Canada punching above its weight class, like Canada is so irrelevant on the world stage right now. That's the other sad thing that showed up in all the last couple of weeks. I mean, I actually asked people in the US, I have a little bit of family in the US, like, are you guys talking about us? Not even. They're not even talking about us. Like Trump's talking about us, and so a bunch of people went like Canada, but we're not on the world stage, man. We're just gone. Like we have a lot of rebuilding to do. A lot of rebuilding. Yeah.
Yeah, Canada has I've heard this from multiple people, like expats, and I've read this online a lot, that people have Canadians have a very oversized, like a complete misapprehension about how influential we think we are on the world stage. Like no one gives a shit.
No,
we're the place with the hockey and the maple syrup. Like that's it. That's pretty much.
Yeah, we
watch the body language with Trudeau in any gatherings of leaders, and you can see who they respect. And there's a difference. Like you don't have to like somebody to either think they're competent or respect the outcomes that they're able to produce. And I feel like with Trump, there's a underlying, like, maybe there's a little bit of hatred, maybe there's a little bit of fear, but there is a certain amount of respect for the energy behind that. And you don't see the same respect going to Trudeau. You don't see it with body language. You don't see it with handshakes or acknowledgements. Like nobody on the world stage respects him.
Like some of the, Jordan Peterson describes Trudeau as Peter Pan syndrome or whatever. I mean, like when Trudeau would prance around stage with his socks, like who told him that's a good idea? Like even like that's what he was doing, right? Like that's not substance, man. You do that when you have no substance. And to me, if you walk into a room with the fancy socks, you're literally signaling to the whole room, I have no substance. I mean, if you're the right person, you could walk in and it just signals, hey man, like I got extreme strength. But that wasn't him. Like that's not him, like Don Cherry. If Don Cherry walks into the room after a decade with his funny outfits, we don't like you and I walking in a room dressed like Don Cherry. No, it doesn't go. For Don, it does. But for most of us walking in a room with our fancy socks and sitting down cross-legged or like, nah, God, give it up. I can't wait till he's gone. I honestly I mean, I'm still not celebrating. When he announced he was resigning or intending to resign, I had a brief moment of happiness, but I won't be happy until he's absolutely gone. And that, I mean, we're going all over the place tonight, but I'm genuinely curious to see. He hasn't said much after a day later. Like it's been 24 hours since the tariffs. I'm still curious to see if he's going to do anything without reconvening government. I think he's going to wait. There's an interesting case, right? The Center for the what's the JCC, whatever there is.
Yeah, JCCF.
Yeah, there is that
Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
Yeah, they're hearing in the they got a hearing scheduled on the 13th and 14th next week to have they're going to try to get prorogation declared as illegal. So I think Trudeau won't do anything until that, and he's got his hands full right now. There is that what exactly is going on with the Emergency Measures Act? There's a case in Ontario around that as well. Yeah, he's got a few, man.
Is it currently getting appealed?
It's getting appealed. He's trying to appeal it, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, what else has he got? He's got a bunch of things going. But that's another silly thing, right? Like we are in a think of the situation we just dodged a bullet. I think we dodged a bullet. I mean, it could have gotten ugly, right? Like the Trump could have said, no, tariffs are going, blah, blah, blah. And we dodged a bullet because right now we have nobody in Parliament, and and then in our largest province, Ontario, is also in the middle of an election. Like, God, we're so vulnerable right now. It's insane. So we're lucky. We dodged a bullet.
Well, that's it. And maybe to we've been going at it here for about an hour and 15, maybe to just sort of, some final thoughts on the tariffs is, if I were in Trump's shoes, I mean, like, this is I'm actually surprised that he did decide to give the break. Like, maybe it has to do with what Mexico, agreed to earlier in the day yesterday. Maybe he was feeling generous. I don't know. But like, if I'm Trump looking at Canada right now, I mean, we're a leaderless government, out of session country. Like, that's prime vulnerability. Like, I mean, if you want to take a view that when Trump talks about, he's said it 4 or 5 times now in, making Canada the 51st state. Like, if you want to, see from his perspective of, like, if you're thinking about vulnerabilities from maybe China or Russia or, Asian, influence, we're a liability, and we're their biggest neighbor. We're a porous border. I mean, I get it if you want to be tough on us, because, like, we're kind of a joke right now.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I thought you were going to say maybe cut us some slack. I was like, that's where I thought you were going.
I think this is where you'd pounce. If you're looking at it from a cutthroat CEO perspective, like Trump might. Like, this is when your enemy's at, or you're not your enemy, but when your adversary in some ways at their weakest point, that's when you pounce.
We might have been too weak. He might have said, "This is not even fair game. I'm gonna give you some slack." I mean,
and took
he took a bit of pity on us. On the flip side, I looked at what he accomplished in the last 3 weeks. I'm like, bravo, Trump. Like, bravo, right? I mean, you got into power. You did 100 executive orders, maybe more than 100. You signed out of the Paris Accord. You fired anybody in a DEI position. You sent troops at the border. You got Mexico to cave. You got Panama to cave. You got Colombia sent their own jets to come and get their illegals and bring them back. Yeah. You sent a plane to, I still don't know why he sent the plane to, he sent his son to Greenland. I think that was part of the showmanship, because I'm pretty sure the guys in Greenland are like, isn't that Trump's plane? What's it doing here? Right? Like, that was just showmanship. He got us.
And who's that guy getting off?
Yeah, he got us to cave. And I asked that question legitimately. I'm like, wow, he accomplished a whole bunch of things. Now he's got 30 days. I think, and I said, is he going to go golfing for 30 days? Or is he now just going to turn his attention to the really good stuff, right? Because like we said earlier, like, he sent a clear message to everybody. I'm willing to do this to my neighbors. Think what I'll do to you. So I think now in the next 30 days, he's going to go get a peace accord in Ukraine. He's going to go sign a deal with Germany for LNG. He's going to, I don't know, reverse Brexit. He's going to get Putin to shake hands with whatever. He's going to get China to sign a deal. He's going to whatever.
Well, he's
going to raise the Titanic and put it in a museum so we can all go look at it. And what's left to do, Trump? Like, he's just going to, like, bravo, man. Like, bravo. Actually, I love what he did in the last couple of weeks, because even this week, I still had people saying, like, what do you expect us to do? Things take time. I'm like, okay, stop with that excuse. Look at what that guy just did. Like,
Yeah. Doesn't take that much time.
No. It was insane.
It only takes time if you don't have the political will to get it done faster.
Yeah.
Or he was able to do the things within the context, and he acted upon the things that he was able to change. So that's the key, is like, if you can put something in motion, he just used the executive order as that tool, and every president does when they come in. So he was very decisive and very quick acting on those.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have to worry about, he's not at, oh no, he's not going to be popular by the end of his term. Who gives a shit? He's not up for re-election.
I mean, he wants a little bit of legacy, and I was thinking about that too. Like, is his legacy, like, if he gets Ukraine and Russia to sign a peace accord, that's legacy. If you like, do you need a chunk of territory? Like, do you need to say, I added the 51st state? Tell you what, Trump, work with Elon and land more Americans on the moon, man, and then land Americans on Mars on your term. Boo, legacy solved, like, done. Go with that one.
Yeah.
Go with that one. Yeah, leave us alone, Tom.
Imagine making that speech,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, hey, we're gonna get you talking about the moon again, and then we're gonna be another half hour.
Yeah, you know that we're not going down there. Yeah, we're good. Hey, man, we can do this every week almost. I love talking to you guys. This is awesome.
Let's do it, man. That's awesome. Well, hey, Marty, man, always a pleasure. Always such a pleasure. We really appreciate you taking the time. This is great. I think, we have we're at about 3,700 people watching here, and there are about 3,600 of them are for you. So that's
people are going to get tired of hearing
awesome.
me. I might need to go on a vacation somewhere. I've been on a lot of yeah.
Well, hopefully we got you down a few rabbit holes that you wouldn't get down just normally. So
cool. Awesome, guys. Yeah.
Well, hey,
let's do this in a month. Anyways, let's do it. Put it in the calendar.
Yeah.
In a month, when the deadline is up, we'll have lots to talk about. I'm sure.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
All right, guys.
Cool.
Good night.
Thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate the comments. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.